If there's anything I no longer care about, it's things that make me broke, clutter my home, and quietly drain my life. Now, I made a video about this about 2 years ago, and while there are still things I don't care about, there are definitely things that I've learned since then. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that minimalism isn't just about letting go of stuff. It's letting go of things that waste your money, your energy, your attention, and also your inner peace. So in this video, I'm sharing 26 things I no longer care about, especially in 2026. So let's start with stuff and things. First thing I still don't care about is getting a newer or fancier car. Now, I've had my 2012 Honda Fit since 2011. It's paid off. Might have a little dent in the back, but it's okay. It still does its job. Whenever I drive around town and I see a lot of newer, fancier cars driving around me, I wonder what their monthly payments are like. And for me, I am just grateful I'm not paying for a car payment. So I still don't care to get a newer or fancier car. The next thing I don't care about are trendy clothes. I used to be a little more trendy when I was living this musician lifestyle, but after I've gotten away from that, I've started wearing much simpler clothes, and you've probably seen me wear this t-shirt like many times in my videos, but I've also realized that for the most part, nobody really cares about what you're wearing, so why should I care about wearing trendy clothes? The next thing I don't care about are viral products. The best way I've avoided this is by just not being on TikTok. I do not use TikTok because I've seen what it does to people. I've definitely come across a lot of people that say they bought something because they saw it on TikTok. They just had to try it because they saw it on TikTok. I tried this recipe because it was on TikTok. So I stay away from TikTok. I really don't care for viral products because really it's just a waste of money, and a lot of times it's just crap stuff. The next thing I don't care about is to upgrade things, especially when they still work. And I feel like I see this in our society these days. People are always chasing like the better version of things or like the premium version of things, constantly upgrading their phones, constantly upgrading their cars. It's really crazy how much people cycle through their things. And it makes me realize that a lot of people take things for granted instead of just accepting that what they have is good enough. The next thing I don't care about are kitchen gadgets, and specifically single-use kitchen gadgets. Now, you would think I would have a lot of these things in my kitchen because I love to cook. I love to spend time in the kitchen, but I really don't have a lot of these things. I don't need an avocado slicer or a banana slicer or even like a garlic press. All those things you could do with just a simple kitchen knife. And a lot of these things are cheaply made, so I don't want to waste my money on them. I really don't care for kitchen gadgets. The next thing I don't care about are expensive beauty self-care products. I have a very simple, very minimalist beauty routine, and I know I've gotten a lot of heat from this before that I just use regular bar soap to wash my face. But I'm gonna slather my face with moisturizer and oil afterwards anyway, so I think what I do is perfectly fine. I don't need like some 10-step beauty routine. It just takes up so much time, and you have to buy all these products where really I don't think our skin needs that much stuff. At least that's what I believe. The next thing I really don't care about is getting the latest tech. Right now, I have an iPhone 11 that I bought refurbished for about like $150. And prior to that, I had an iPhone 8. And the only reason why I even upgraded is because I couldn't use apps I needed anymore on my iPhone 8. Otherwise, I really don't care to get the latest version of some tech thing. I don't need, a better camera, a better version of whatever. I think if it works just fine, why replace it? If it functions, why replace it? And I also don't have a smartwatch. I just use a regular watch if I need it. And I also have never had AirPods. I refuse to use them. So the last thing I don't care about when it comes to stuff and things is having aesthetic home decor. Now, my place has kind of looked the same for the last, 5-6 years. I've just had the same furniture, even the same decor as far as vases and little things like that. But other than that, I really don't have a lot of things in my home. I prefer it to be simple, to not have a lot of distractions. I like that it's easy to clean. So when I come home after a busy, crazy day, I like knowing that my home feels peaceful and calm because there's just not a lot of things to stimulate me. Now, the next group of things I want to talk about have to do with our consumption habits. And the first thing I really don't care to do is to constantly consume content. And I think we are all guilty of this at some point, that we're constantly consuming, on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook and, the news, watching something on TV. And I feel like we are just so distracted with so much information, so much noise, that it actually prevents us from focusing on what's important or what's in front of us or what we're supposed to do. And it affects our moods as well. So I really don't care to constantly be in front of a screen, constantly consuming, constantly cluttering my mind with information. The next thing that I actually no longer care about is trying every routine or system. I used to try to make the most perfect morning routine and try to do that every day. Wake up, meditate, write my journal, go to the gym, have like the perfect breakfast, but not every morning starts off the same way. And honestly, I've not had a perfect morning routine in months. So I think we need to stop trying to strive for this perfect system or perfect routine. Just embrace the day as it comes. Take things one day at a time. Not every day is going to be the same. More than anything, just trying to find that perfect routine or system actually just complicates things, and then we just end up disappointed. So let's not strive for perfection. Let's strive for what works right now. The next thing I no longer care about is always being productive. There's a lot of content out there pushing us to hustle and being productive members of society and always filling up our schedule with something. And I used to be that person. I used to feel like I have to constantly be doing something. And when I'm not doing something, I feel very off and weird, like, oh my gosh, I need to be doing something. And after a while, I got really tired and I felt unmotivated, uninspired, burnt out even. And so after a while, I just learned to work with my energy levels and figure out when I'm most productive and when I'm not. And I've just learned to embrace that. I need rest. I need times of quiet and nothing. And I find that I'm way more productive now when I'm not forcing myself to be productive. The next thing I really don't care about is having to fill every quiet moment. And this goes back to what we just talked about on how we're constantly consuming content. Everyone is always on their phones. Everyone's always in front of a screen watching TV. Or you're going out for a walk and you have headphones on and you almost get hit by a car because you're so distracted. Trust me, I've seen it happen one too many times. Or we're amongst a group of friends and when the conversation ends and there's this awkward silence, everyone picks up their phone. I think it's so hard for people these days to not be distracted. I think people have a hard time being in the moment, being present. It would be worth it to try to put the phone down. Allow yourself to be quiet. Allow yourself to be bored. Allow yourself to just be alone with your thoughts, because you might be surprised what you might learn about yourself, or you might be surprised how good it feels to just be quiet. The next thing I no longer care about is saving things for later. And I used to do this a lot, where I would save outfits, clothes, household gadgets. I'd go shopping and buy something because it was on sale, even though I don't need it, but I might need it later. So I no longer care to do that anymore, because all it did was clutter up my space, and it also cluttered up my mind. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to use this someday, even though half the time or most of the time, those days never happen. So I just embraced what I have at the moment. And if that moment comes, I will figure it out. The next thing I really don't care to do is to keep my options open. And this can go in many different directions. But for example, just having a ton of clothes is keeping your options open. Having shoes for different occasions, or having tops and dresses for all kinds of occasions. And a lot of times we don't even need them. Or just having a ton of commitments with friends and families, just spreading ourselves too thin with everyone, keeping our options open. Or having a lot of plans, a lot of goals, just trying to fill up our schedules. And really, at the core of it, I think it's because we have a fear of commitment or a fear of regret or a fear of missing out. I think that's the problem with keeping our options open, is because we have a hard time deciding or prioritizing. I choose to keep my life simple. I have very few options available to me as far as clothes. I really don't have a big social life, and I try to do as little as possible day to day. The next thing I no longer care to do is to research everything. And this can go in different directions, whether it's, buying decisions or trying to make up our mind about something. I think there's just so much information out there, again, constantly consuming content, that we're bombarding ourselves with information that it actually makes it harder to decide. So for me, if I'm trying to research something, to buy something, I try not to go down a rabbit hole. I just read an article or two, read some reviews, and then just go for it. Just go for it and then deal with it. I think researching everything actually delays the goal, and I really don't care to waste my time. At the end of the day, it just makes it harder. The last thing I no longer care about is needing to be caught up with everything. I feel like we're constantly pressuring ourselves to get caught up, catch up on our emails or catch up on our text message responses or catch up on the news or the latest trends, the latest gossip. But in reality, nobody is ever really caught up. Life keeps moving. Every day is different. There's always going to be different things and tasks being thrown at us. I think it's okay to just take things one day at a time. You don't have to spend your day off catching up. Some things take time. Let it take time. And honestly, some things can wait. The next group of things I want to talk about have to do with our social and external lives. And the first thing I no longer care about is keeping up with everyone. I think we need to let go of this pressure of constantly staying connected. We don't have to respond to everyone's text messages right away. We don't have to be available to everyone. We really don't need to be involved in everyone's lives. As I've gotten older, I realize that it's not realistic and it is mentally exhausting. Not every relationship needs constant maintenance for it to be meaningful. People will always come and go, and people that stay, they're the ones that you don't have to talk to for many, many months. And when you see them again, you pick up where you left off. Those are the deeper connections that you want to prioritize in your lives. So I really don't care to keep up with everyone. And I think it's okay if your social circles are small. The next thing I no longer care about is other people's dramas. When I was younger, I used to get caught up in other people's dramas all the time, to where it actually used to affect me. But now that I'm older, I don't have the mental capacity for that. I don't have the emotional capacity for that. However, if someone needs me to be there for them and they have some things they need to vent to me and share with me, I'm all ears. But at the end of the day, I try not to get caught up in other people's dramas, because that is their drama, not mine. That is theirs to deal with, not me. The next thing I no longer care about is to have an opinion on everything. Because you know what? Not everything deserves our mental energy. Not everything deserves our attention. I think people get caught up having to react to everything, or having to say something about something, having their take, expressing their opinion about something. But all it is just mental clutter, and it also disrupts our peace. And I think the more mature and peaceful approach sometimes is to just say nothing. The next thing I no longer care about is having to explain myself to everyone. And this is something I've gotten better about as I've gotten older. When I was young, I used to care about what everyone thought about me, so I had to explain myself if I did something I thought was embarrassing or stupid. But now I don't care. I don't have to explain myself. I just do me, because this is me. And I also realize that most people don't really think about us as much as we think they do. So there's really no point for you to explain yourself. You don't have to do that. You do you. Move on with your lives, because people will move on too. The last thing in this category that I no longer care about is trying to fit in, because I no longer care what people think about me. I no longer care to waste my time, my energy, and my money trying to impress other people. And you know, this took a lot of work. This took a lot of growth for me to be comfortable with myself. But the more comfortable I became about myself, the less I needed external validation. So I no longer care to fit in. I no longer care to live up to other people's expectations. I really don't care to impress anyone anymore. So the last category I want to talk about have to do with our identity and how we see ourselves. So one of the things I no longer care about is winning arguments and proving everyone wrong. I've realized that there's really no point in arguing. There's really no point in trying to convince anyone that they're wrong and I'm right, because everybody thinks they're right and that I'm wrong. So why waste our time and energy trying to argue with someone? We live in a time where, especially on the internet, that we're just encouraged to debate everything. But for me, I think protecting my peace is much more important than being understood. So I choose to stay silent instead of reacting to every disagreement, to every argument. The next thing I no longer care about is comparing my life timeline to other people. And I know this is hard because, you know, when we're all connected on social media and we see what others are up to, it's hard not to question, what have I been doing with my life? Especially with people our own age. Sometimes people just seem like they're ahead, or that I'm behind, or that they've accomplished more, they've done more in their lives compared to what I think I should have done. But really, we need to stop pressuring ourselves to like catch up with other people, because people just post the best parts of their lives. They don't share like what they had to go through just to get there. And we all approach life differently. We all get presented with different circumstances or opportunities. And so there's really no point in comparing. You have to remember that there's no universal timeline that we're all supposed to follow. So I really don't care to compare myself to other people anymore. The next thing I no longer care about is feeling guilty for resting. And this goes back to what we talked about earlier about always being productive and hustling, and you know, every moment of the day you have to do something productive. And I used to feel guilty about that. You know, I used to feel guilty if I needed to slow down or rest, and I would start seeing myself as lazy. But we have to stop this mentality that rest is something that you have to earn or deserve. Not every moment in our life has to be productive. It's okay to rest. It's okay to have nothing to do. Listen to your body. You will thank yourself later on. The next thing I no longer care about is holding on to old versions of myself. And this is a huge thing that I learned through minimalism and decluttering. As to why I was holding on to so many things, it's because I was holding on to old versions of myself. And that could look like holding on to people, old habits, old styles, goals, a lot of things that we hold on to that actually no longer fit into our current lives. I think we have a lot of guilt over letting things go because we also have a guilt of change, but it's okay to let things go. I think growth can look like letting things go, and that it's totally okay for us to change and become someone different. The last thing I no longer care about is needing to have everything figured out. I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. I just turned 41 last month, and I have to admit, I still don't always have everything figured out. And that's okay, because the thing is, life will always change. And I know I've changed, my goals have changed, and it's okay. You know, we don't have to stay on the same course that we thought we would be 10 years ago. I know it's hard, you know, we pressure ourselves to have a clear idea of our future and have this certainty about our money and our career and our lifestyles. But again, it's okay. You know, I think we should just embrace life where it is and just learn how to adapt instead of over plan, and to just trust the process. And for the most part, everything works out as they should. Anyway, so it's not that these things don't matter at all. I just don't let them take up space in my life anymore. And I think that's what minimalism really is. It's not just about owning less stuff. It's just needing less, needing less validation, less noise, and also less pressure to keep up. And when you learn to let go of these things, you not only save money, but you also just feel lighter. Anyway, let me know in the comments below, what are some things that you no longer care about anymore? And also some things that you wish you didn't care about. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.